Number 10, clown tries to break into Area 51. A limousine driver in a clown mask broke into a Las Vegas apartment with a fake bomb covered in fairy lights so he could hijack a plane and fly to Area 51. Yes, this is a true story. On December 8, 2021, 36-year-old Matthew Hancock told police to call him the Chosen One. He had driven the Lincoln through security gates at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then broke through 2 more fences and drove like a maniac on the airport runways. Officers watched the suspect drive between planes before they could stop him. Hancock then left the truck and put on a clown mask before saying he had a bomb. Terrified workers took cover as police arrived. Hancock then told authorities he had a shotgun and a gasoline gadget in his truck, and he was arrested. He also informed authorities that he wanted to hijack a jet and fly to Area 51. Hancock was arrested, and it turns out the quote bomb was just an oxygen tank with a pressure gauge and Christmas lights. Hancock claimed the police had high security clearance, were affiliated to the mob, and had someone owed him millions of dollars. Clearly, someone needs a reality check. Number 9, Sugar Daddy. At the beginning of 2019, a former Playboy model took advantage of 71-year-old psychiatrist Thomas Burchard, an elderly man with dementia. His body was found brutally bludgeoned in the trunk of a car in the middle of the desert outside Las Vegas. Burchard took a last-minute trip to Vegas to see 25-year-old Kelsey Turner. It's unclear how Burchard and Turner met or what the exact nature of the relationship was, but he did financially support her to the tune of more than $300,000 over a relatively short period of time. Basically, this guy was her sugar daddy. Judy Erb, Burchard's fiancée in California, became worried when he never returned home, and she knew in her heart that something terrible had happened to him. Burchard had always been a nice and generous man, but recently had started to forget things. Judy was concerned that Vegas wasn't a good idea, and she was right. The car that Burchard's body was found in ended up belonging to Kelsey, and police arrested her and charged her with the gruesome murder. They also charged her boyfriend Logan Kennison and Diana Pena, her roommate, with the crime. Pena claimed that she had no direct involvement with the murder and blamed her co-defendants. She pleaded guilty to accessory to murder while Turner and Kennison chose to fight the allegations being made against them. Prosecutors spared Turner from the death penalty, and as of earlier this year, the cases are still ongoing. Number 8, Hilton Arson. The Las Vegas Hilton is well known for hosting headlining artists such as Elvis Presley and Liberace, but the famed hotel is also the site of one of the city's most tragic crimes. In 1981, Philip Klein had only been a busboy at the Hilton for 2 days when a fire broke out in an elevator lobby near him on the 8th floor. He told visitors that he used a trash can to spray water on the flames. The fire destroyed much of the building, killing 8 people and wounding 200 more. Klein's actions were originally commended, but investigators got suspicious when he had a Freudian slip, telling authorities he grabbed a trash can and filled it with fire, not water. Klein's statement was questioned further by investigators, and he eventually broke down. He admitted to setting the fire, but he did it accidentally when the joint he was smoking caught fire and set some nearby curtains ablaze. When investigators were unable to duplicate a fire starting in the way he described, they doubted that version of events. Klein was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of 8 murder charges and 1 act of arson. He later gave an interview where he revealed the truth about what happened. Before work, a friend gave him a PCP-laced joint, and while high on PCP, Klein set fire to several curtains with a cigarette lighter. Moral of the story? Don't do drugs, kids, especially at work. Number 7, The Murder in Concrete. Adult entertainer Esmeralda Gonzalez vanished from her home in 2019. The 24-year-old's body was found in the Nevada desert outside Las Vegas months later. Someone had bound her body with tape, stuffed her into a water tank, encased the tank with cement, and covered everything with wood. A medical examiner determined that Esmeralda most likely died from being fed a toxic substance or strangulation. Cops arrested 45-year-old Christopher Prestipino along with his girlfriend Lisa Mort. Prosecutors also identified another suspect in the slaying, Cassandra Garrett, whom they believed to have participated in the killing. All 3 were brought up on a slew of charges related to Esmeralda's murder. Court documents revealed that they had allegedly tied their victim to a bedpost and injected her with pool cleaner before strangling her to death. Their motive remains unclear. In late 2020, Prestipino was committed to a psychiatric hospital amid claims that his mental health was deteriorating, which put the trial on hold indefinitely. In order to face justice in court, Prestipino will have to demonstrate that he's well enough to understand the entirety of the situation. Until then, he will continue to stay at the loony bin. Number 6. Kidnapping of Steve Wynn's daughter. The casino tycoons who control the Las Vegas Strip are worth billions of dollars, and that net worth makes them and their families targets for thieves looking to earn a fast buck. On July 26, 1993, Steve Wynn, the CEO of the firm that owns Treasure Island and the Bellagio, had just returned home from work when he received a call from a man who claimed that he had kidnapped his daughter. Kevin Wynn, Steve Wynn's 26-year-old daughter, was taken from her house in an elite Las Vegas area by two armed men. The kidnappers demanded $2.5 million in ransom, but when Wynn told them that it was all the cash he had on hand, they agreed to $1.45 million. Wynn removed the money from the casino vault and placed it in a white plastic bag in a parked vehicle a few miles from the Strip. When the kidnappers received the ransom, they called Wynn and told him his daughter could be found at McCarran International Airport. Wynn found his daughter bound but safe in a car in the airport parking lot. One day after the kidnapping, an athletic club manager named Ray Cuddy strolled into the car dealership in Newport Beach, California, and tried to pay for a new Ferrari with $200,000 cash. The FBI was waiting for Cuddy when he returned to the dealership a few days later to finish the transaction. Jacob Sherwood, Cuddy's accomplice, was also arrested soon after. Both men were convicted of kidnapping-related counts and sentenced to decades in federal prison. Do you think they would have gotten away with it if they hadn't tried to buy a car? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 5. Law student. Police in Las Vegas received a disturbing call last year from Justin Medoff, a 31-year-old law student, who allegedly woke up to find his 28-year-old girlfriend, Stephanie Duarte, quote, beaten, bloody, and unconscious. When the cops arrived at the couple's hotel room, it was covered in blood. Medoff had allegedly bathed Stephanie and tried to revive her. When medical professionals tried performing CPR on the young woman, they discovered that she was in rigor mortis, the state of decomposition that causes a corpse to become stiff. This meant that she had been dead for several hours from blunt force trauma. The couple had argued out in public the night before and returned to the room separately. Hotel guests reported hearing screaming from the room between the 2 and 3 o'clock hours of the morning. Officers noticed scratch marks on Medoff and interrogated him about what really went down. He admitted that he and Stephanie had argued but denied having anything to do with her death. Medoff's story failed to convince the authorities of his innocence, and now he faces charges of murder with a deadly weapon. The aspiring young attorney's future has dramatically changed as he now finds himself on the complete opposite side of the law. Number 4. The Watch Thief. Wendy Rose Jones, 23, was arrested on multiple counts of felony grand larceny after two men reported watch thefts from their hotel rooms at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas in February and March of 2021. In the first case, Cosmopolitan Security contacted police after a man reported being the victim of grand larceny and potentially being drugged. He told officers he met a woman named Rosa inside the hotel near the bar. He then went to his room and drank more with her. The police stated that the man didn't remember much of the night when he fell asleep after drinking. The man also told police Rosa may have drugged him because he woke up the next morning to find $1,500 in cash was missing from his wallet. His Audemars Piguet Royal Oak watch worth $37,000 was also gone. The man told police the woman had distinctive tattoos, including a lion on her thigh. In the second case, a man told police he met a woman on the casino floor and invited her to his room, where he ordered room service. He said he noticed she had a gigantic lion or tiger tattooed on her leg. He awoke the next day to find his $45,000 Rolex Daytona watch and iPhone 12 stolen. He also admitted to investigators that he had been drugged. Jones was arrested by Las Vegas police in late April 2021. She is currently out of custody since no criminal charges were filed against her in either case, though she still has hearings to attend. Number 3. Supermarket Massacre. In recent years, the United States has seen a string of mass shootings, and Las Vegas is no stranger. On June 3, 1999, Zane Floyd, a 23-year-old ex-Marine, walked into an Albertsons supermarket carrying a 12-gauge shotgun. He shot an employee next to a row of shopping carts near the entrance before rampaging through the store and killing 3 more workers. Floyd was then seen on surveillance camera chasing Zachary Emneger before shooting him in the back and then again on the ground. Zachary Emneger was injured but alive, and he thought that playing dead was his best option. Floyd walked around the store before returning to Zachary's body, stopping for a moment, concluding he was dead. Floyd tried to flee on foot after shooting everyone he could find in the store, but the police had surrounded him. Floyd then stood outside the shop with a gun to his head. He was finally coaxed into surrendering and was convicted of 4 charges of murder, as well as sexual assault on an exotic dancer that he had committed early that morning. He is currently on death row in Nevada, awaiting execution. Number 2. O.J. Simpson sports memorabilia heist. We all remember O.J. Simpson from his professional football career and his appearances as a comedy actor. And his murder trial for the deaths of his ex-wife and her lover. Simpson was acquitted of murder, but the families of the murder victims won a multi-million-dollar civil case against him, putting him in financial jeopardy. It was his financial difficulties that landed him in prison. In 2007, the majority of Simpson's income was still being taken to pay off his civil judgments, when he received a phone call from auction house owner Thomas Riccio, saying 2 sports memorabilia dealers would be selling items once owned by Simpson in Las Vegas. Riccio arranged for Simpson and the memorabilia merchants to meet in a hotel room about a mile from the strip, but Riccio put a small tape recorder on a dresser without anyone knowing. Simpson arrived at the hotel room with 5 accomplices, several of whom had guns. Simpson directed his friends to keep everyone in the room from leaving while he collected the items from the merchants. The robbery was finished within 6 minutes, and Simpson and his friends were seen on video joking about their exploits over dinner. But they couldn't be happy for long. When the authorities interrogated Simpson, he claimed no one in his entourage had a gun during the event, and he was simply trying to recover items taken from his residence. Simpson's story unraveled, though, when the audio recording was released and some of Simpson's accomplices volunteered to testify in exchange for reduced sentences. Simpson turned down a plea agreement that would have given him 2 to 5 years in prison and instead chose to go to trial. Simpson was convicted and sentenced to 33 years in jail for kidnapping and armed robbery after several weeks of testimony. It just goes to show you that you only get one get-out-of-free-jail card in your life. Number 1. The Biker Bandit. The casinos that line the Vegas Strip have insane security. As a result, few are ever robbed, and when they are, offenders are usually captured pretty quickly. On December 14, 2010, a man strolled through the Bellagio Hotel and Casino after parking his motorcycle. He approached a craps table while wearing his helmet, then pulled out a revolver. The dealer turned over his chips, and the thief dashed back through the casino, riding off on his bike onto the busy Las Vegas Strip. The robber stole $1.5 million in chips, but here's the thing. They would have to be either returned to the casino or sold to a third party for them to have any value. A few weeks after the robbery, the Salvation Army bell ringer attempted to cash a $25,000 chip given to him by a stranger. Soon after that, a man calling himself the Biker Bandit surfaced on the internet, offering to sell more of the $25,000 chips. Undercover Las Vegas cops set up an appointment to buy some and arrested the foolish man. The biker's name was Carleo, and he had been a visitor at the Bellagio at the time of the crime, and even went to the casino afterwards to drink and gamble. He allegedly robbed another casino 3 weeks before the Bellagio heist, making off with $18,000 in cash. Carleo was also the son of a local judge, which added yet another twist to the story. He was convicted and sent to prison for his crimes. Number 10. Bad publicity. In May 2005, a former employee of a Vegas strip club was shot to death. Why? Because he badmouthed his ex-employers. 44-year-old Timothy Hadlin was a doorman at the Palomino on the main Vegas Boulevard. However, after some friction between him and the owners, he decided to call it quits and work somewhere else. He figured that casually mentioning the bad behavior of his ex-boss to cab drivers would be pretty harmless, but boy was he wrong. Apparently, the owner, Luis Hidalgo, thought that Hadlin's talkative nature was costing him thousands in lost revenue. Rather than hitting him up and sorting the issue out like an adult, though, he decided to go down the mafia route. After all, he was the owner of a club. He issued a hit on his ex-employee, saying that anyone who disposed of him would get $5,000 as a reward. Days later, Hadlin was found dead in the middle of a deserted road near Lake Mead with a gunshot wound to the head. Interestingly enough, flyers for the club were also littered around his body, which showed that they were trying to make an example out of him. It didn't take long for the kingpin energy to leave Hidalgo, as he was arrested along with his son, the actual shooter, Kenneth Counts, and his girlfriend, who pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and now they all face life in prison. Number 9. Free manicure. In December 2018, a woman ran over and killed her manicurist while trying to skip out on a $35 bill. 23-year-old Crystal Whipple showed up at the Crystal Nails and Spa in Vegas to get her nails done, and honestly, she seemed like your ordinary run-of-the-mill customer. So, not questioning anything, the 51-year-old manager knew Annie Nguyen told the new client to sit down for a fresh coat of paint on her nails. The manicure was done and dusted in no time at all. When Annie asked Crystal to pay up, though, there was something off about her. her. At first she hesitated and then proceeded to get a credit card out to make the $35 payment. But her intentions were soon made clear when the card returned an error saying that it had been stolen. Of course she wasn't ever going to admit it and tried to escape in her car under the guise of getting cash from it. Even the car she was driving, a black Camaro, didn't belong to her. When she hit the ignition and tried to get away, Annie ran out to the parking lot to block her from leaving. Crystal, on the other hand, just couldn't take the embarrassment anymore and decided that it would be a good idea to hit the gas and run the manager over instead. And she didn't just run her over, she dragged her body with the car for 50 feet or just about 15 meters, which obviously killed her. She was arrested from her home later that week and was eventually handed down a sentence of 10 to 25 years after pleading guilty to second-degree murder. Number 8. Jealous boyfriend. In May 2022, Vegas police received a 911 call saying that a woman had been stabbed in the backyard of a home. When officers arrived on the scene, they found out that it was her own boyfriend who did the stabbing. 20-year-old Michael Munoz Andrade had a suspicion that his girlfriend was cheating on him. Rather than confronting her about it, he decided to hide at a friend's place and ambush her there instead. When she turned up at the house to borrow some things, he sprung up at her, accusing her and throwing tantrums. As much as she tried to calm the situation, things just kept getting more and more heated, so much so that he started shouting that if he couldn't have her, then no one else could either. He then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and started chasing her across the garden. Apparently his intention was to kill his girlfriend and then himself. The girlfriend knew that Michael also had a history of domestic battery, which meant that what he was threatening was very much real. Minutes later, the next door neighbor was rushing over to provide first aid to the girl who'd just been stabbed twice in her stomach. Thankfully, she was taken to the hospital in time. Michael, on the other hand, was held down by other bystanders until the police arrived. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Interestingly enough, his defense was that he'd blacked out and that he wanted mental health treatment rather than jail time. Number 7. A Dance of Love and Death. In January 2011, Vegas police stumbled upon the remains of a cirque dancer who had gone missing a few weeks prior. The suspect? Her ex-lover. 35-year-old Jason Griffith, who also went by the stage name Blue, was a dancer in the Cirque du Soleil show Love at the Mirage Resort. Years of stage work in Sin City had turned him into a bit of a sexual animal, as he regularly juggled girlfriends and sexual acquaintances. Even when he met Debbie Flores at a football halftime show in 2009, it was hard for him to resist his cheating tendencies. Debbie had a stage role in the racy fantasy review at the Luxor, which meant that she was also in the same industry as Blue. The pair had pretty good chemistry. Little did she know, however, that their relationship wasn't monogamous at all, as Blue kept sleeping with other women behind her back. Their relationship was inherently broken, as Debbie herself had a lot of anger issues. Plus, all the deception didn't help. Oh, and apparently he also bailed on her a bunch of times, even while she was getting an abortion, only to come back months later. Usually these arguments were just that, mere arguments, but the trouble had been brewing, and eventually it had to explode. When Debbie got pregnant a second time, she reached out to Blue again, telling him that he needed to devote all of his attention to her. One thing led to another, and things got violent. When she reached into her purse, Blue panicked and put her into a headlock. He held her tightly until she stopped struggling. Not knowing what to do next, he decided to dismember her body and dump the pieces in a tub of concrete just so he could save his dancing career. Unfortunately for him, his roommate, Louis Colombo, led police to Debbie's body, and Blue was charged with murder and sentenced to 10 years to life in prison. Do you think 10 years to life is a fair sentence? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Abusive pimp tries Texas. In June 2020, a woman was hit and killed by a car on Interstate 610 after she was seen running away from her supposed pimp. 29-year-old Deandros Finks was a pimp around the Vegas Strip and had been in the business for a while, but with the pandemic closing casinos down in the area, he decided to try his luck in Houston instead. He got his band of prostitutes together and moved to a vacation rental to seek better business. One of the women realized that she didn't want to work and live with him anymore, so she packed her bags and got ready to leave. Finks, not being the easiest of negotiators, couldn't stand someone leaving him like that and tried to force her back into his house instead. At this point, she dropped everything and ran toward the interstate with Finks running after her. She thought that she'd be able to get away from her abusive pimp by making it across the highway, and to be fair, she almost did, until sadly, she was hit by a car and killed. Finks' story was that she got a bit too drunk with one of his customers who dropped her on the wrong side of the freeway, but surveillance footage from the property was enough to put his claims to rest as he now faces a murder charge. Number 5. Evidence. In May 2017, the Vegas police received reports of a man who'd been stabbed to death in his Central Valley apartment. It was a used condom that led them to the actual suspect. 25-year-old Shawnice McKinley, who was a prostitute at the Palace Station Casino, wasn't used to getting super rich customers. So when 80-year-old Norman walked up to her to get her services, she thought that she had just hit the jackpot. The pair quickly got into his Jaguar and sped away to his Central Valley apartment. After everything was done, it was time for Shawnice to leave with her money, but she just couldn't let go of the incredible opportunity that was in front of her. So, not really thinking about the consequences, she decided to stab him to death and steal a bunch of stuff from his apartment. The following morning, Norman's family members found him dead in the apartment with no sign of a killer anywhere. Shawnice had done a pretty good job of hiding all of the evidence, and she almost got away with it until the detective stumbled upon a used condom in the room. Sadly for her, it had her DNA on it, which eventually led to her arrest. She now faces murder charges. Number 4. Magic mushrooms. In October 2011, police responded to reports of a man who stopped breathing inside his apartment, which he also used to grow illegal magic mushrooms. The 45-year-old man ran a pretty decent-sized operation from his apartment on King Richard Avenue, where he grew the psilocybin mushrooms. There were tons of plants growing in aquariums used for cultivation, with each ounce selling for over $200. Police also found a bunch of fully processed hallucinogenic fungus, which was also ready for sale. Now, the thing with making magic mushrooms at home is that first you probably shouldn't do it, and if you decide to delve into that for some reason, having appropriate safety gear is a must. Even the police officers investigating the scene had to wear hazmat suits to avoid toxic fumes, but the man didn't realize that and inhaled a bit too much of the magic gas. He was later found dead by his roommate with no signs of violence. Magic mushrooms are poisonous if not handled or consumed properly. In fact, even the coroner deemed that the death wasn't suspicious. The roommate was not charged with any crimes either. Number 3. Lightning does strike twice. In August 2022, Vegas police received reports of a deadly shooting at a hotel that left one man dead and 2 women injured. 54-year-old Billy Hemsley was spending the night with his 49-year-old cousin Artorius Milner, his niece, and her girlfriend in a room at the Mirage on the Las Vegas Strip. Apparently, the 2 cousins were just messing around and play fighting when someone said something hurtful, which ignited an argument between them. One thing led to another, and things quickly got violent as Milner started choking Billy. Little did he know, however, that his cousin was actually carrying a gun on him. Billy pulled out that gun, shot the other 3 people in the room, and then fled the scene. The police took less than a minute to respond, but even that was too late, as Milner was already dead. His daughter and her girlfriend were taken to the hospital in critical condition. The daughter was shot 15 times. Billy was arrested on the same night, but here's the interesting part. This isn't the first time that he's tried to kill his cousin. Court records show that he tried to shoot at and kill Milner almost 20 years ago in 2003, which he obviously survived. He spent a year and a half in jail for it as well. But that's not all, as Billy was also charged with attempted murder after stabbing a woman in 2012, for which he'd spent several years in prison. So this definitely wasn't his first rodeo, and perhaps he'd spent the last 2 decades plotting his revenge all along. Number 2. Slot machine thief. In May 2022, a man's attempt at petty crime turned very dark when he ran over and killed someone while fleeing the scene. 28-year-old Samuel Schmid had a history of robbery and decided he was going to steal a purse from someone gambling at Dottie's slot machine casino. It was meant to be a quick crime, in and out. Little did he know, however, that this day would be his undoing. Samuel ran into Dottie's, spotted his target at one of the machines, pointed a gun at her head, and stole her purse. While he was running outside, it almost felt like he had hit the jackpot. What he hadn't factored into his mastermind plan, though, was the 60-year-old manager of the parlor, Alicia Gibellina, coming after him. So when he got into his stolen black Mercedes SUV, she stood behind the car. Of course, he wasn't going to surrender to an old lady, so he proceeded to reverse into her instead, which in turn ended up killing her. He was then arrested in Riverside County in Southern California, from where he was extradited back to Nevada and now faces a murder charge. Number 1. Deadly siblings. In May 2021, police received reports of gunshots near Twain Avenue. When officers arrived, they noticed a group of people standing near a crashed car, which had a dead man inside it. 21-year-old Sarif El Amin had been shot in his chest while driving, leading to the car crashing. This happened at around 4 a.m., and there weren't any witnesses around, but some clever trickery and mobile location wizardry led them to the two prime suspects, Ryan and Devon Corte Griffith. The two siblings were both booked on charges of murder, conspiracy, and robbery. What exactly prompted them to do this, though? Well, apparently Ryan and Elamine were in his car driving to her apartment, where he dropped her off. Ryan said that she spotted her brother standing near his white Camaro and some other people outside. The group noticed Elamine had a gun in his pocket, and they asked him to see it, but he refused. He got back into the car and tried to drive away, but was approached at the window and shot in the chest. He crashed at the end of the street. Ryan got into her brother's car and tried to flee, but then she realized she left her phone in Elamine's car. Then she went back for it, and that's how detectives traced her phone back to the crime scene. Ryan refused to implicate her brother, saying that she never saw him shoot and only told him to drive to the scene later because she'd forgotten her phone in the car. Ryan's cloudy recollection of the event doesn't quite add up, though, and the siblings are now facing murder charges.
Number 7. Crypto Queen. Ruja Ignatova, who's notoriously known as the Crypto Queen, was added to the FBI's most wanted list in June 2022 for securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and more. Ruja is best known as the founder of a cryptocurrency scheme called OneCoin, which was described simply by the Times as one of the biggest scams in history. She was accused of defrauding investors out of more than $4 billion. She is now the 11th woman in 72 years to be placed on the top 10 most wanted list. She co-founded OneCoin in 2014 with her partner Carl Sebastian Greenwood. According to Special Agent Ronald Shimko, countless victims worldwide were financially devastated by this. The feds think Ruja was tipped off by someone close to her. She was under an international and federal probe shortly before being charged in the Southern District Court of New York. Unfortunately, the woman has been on the run ever since 2017, the year she was formally charged, and she's continued to avoid police at every turn. On October 25, 2017, Ruja traveled from Bulgaria to Athens in Greece, her last known location. The woman speaks German, Bulgarian, and English. The FBI believes that she's likely using a fake passport as well. She naturally has dark hair and brown eyes, but investigators think that she may have changed her appearance to blend in. To this day, Ruja remains at large. Number 6. MS-13 Gang Leader. Yulan Adonai Archaga Correas, sometimes referred to as Alexander Mendoza or Porky, is the alleged leader of a violent criminal organization called MS-13. He was added to the FBI's most wanted list in November 2021. Yulan is currently wanted for several things, including narcotics trafficking, racketeering, and firearms offenses. He's allegedly in charge of the MS-13 Honduras section, and it's believed he's also providing narcotics, firearms, and cash to members of the gang operating within the U.S. Authorities have accused Yulan of being the man responsible for ordering the death of multiple rival gang members. At the moment, the FBI still thinks Yulan is hiding out somewhere in Honduras. The criminal was initially charged in New York's Southern District, and he's the 536th fugitive to earn a place on the wanted list. It's believed that he facilitated the transportation of several tons of cocaine that originated in Honduras, but somehow ended up in the U.S. through an unknown means of transportation. Yulan is also accused of conspiracy to possess machine guns that were utilized by gang members supporting international drug trafficking. A Honduran tribunal convicted Yulan of conspiracy as well as a few other charges in August 2018, resulting in a lengthy prison sentence. But before being taken behind bars, he managed to escape Honduran custody in early 2020, when about 20 of his accomplices wore military and police uniforms as disguises and stormed into the courthouse where Yulan was scheduled for a hearing. Multiple actual police officers were killed during the dangerous escape. The 40-year-old fugitive has black hair and brown eyes, and it's believed that he only speaks Spanish. He's about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs roughly 160 pounds. Although authorities think he's in Honduras at the moment, he really could be anywhere in the world, so be sure to keep an eye out for this dangerous criminal. Number 5. Eugene Palmer. Eugene Palmer is a fugitive from Stony Point, New York, wanted for taking the life of his daughter-in-law Tammy back in 2012. He wasn't officially placed on the FBI's most wanted list until May 2019, though. On the morning of September 24, 2012, after escorting her 2 young children to the school bus, Tammy would never return home. It's believed that Palmer hid and waited out in the woods, then fired at Tammy with his shotgun while she walked back to her house. He first struck her in the arm, and then moved closer in order to hit her at close range in the chest, proving fatal. Immediately after the shooting, Palmer fled the scene and body in his green Dodge Ram pickup truck. While the truck would soon be found outside Harriman State Park, located in Rockland County, Palmer was nowhere in sight. The last known trace of the criminal was picked up by search dogs who followed the man's scent to a remote, secluded campground in the woods. But since then, there's been no other reported sightings or traces of the man, and he remains missing to this day. A federal arrest warrant was issued for the fugitive on June 10, 2013, but according to the Haverstraw police, Palmer's family members have expressed that they truly believe he died in Harriman State Park. This theory has been widely dismissed by a severe lack of evidence and the fact that despite multiple searches of the area, his body has not been recovered. Palmer is an expert outdoorsman and an experienced angler, hiker, and hunter. He does depend on several medications for diabetes and his heart condition though, and his left thumb is deformed. This makes it unlikely that he's been hiding out in the woods all this time. Authorities believe he could be in upstate New York or Florida, where he has relatives, but at the moment, they're entirely uncertain. On July 20, 2022, Palmer was taken off the FBI's most wanted list for unknown reasons, but despite his removal, he remains a wanted murderer. Number 4. Alejandro Castillo. Alejandro Castillo was added to the FBI's most wanted list in October 2017 for killing Truc Quan Sandy Lai Lee in Charlotte, North Carolina back in August 2016. He was born in 1988 and was only 17 years old when he committed the crime. That year, he worked at a Shomar's restaurant in Charlotte and was co-workers with the 23-year-old victim. The two of them apparently dated for a brief period before breaking up, and Castillo reportedly owed Lee money but refused to pay it back. But then on August 9, 2016, he sent Lee a text stating that he wanted to finally repay her the money she'd once loaned him. That afternoon, Castillo was picked up by his new girlfriend at the time, Amia Feaster, in her Dodge Caliber, who took him to the meeting he and Lee agreed upon, a quick trip convenience store. Castillo met his ex there, which was the last place Lee was ever seen alive. Authorities believe that instead of repaying her the money, Castillo forced her to withdraw all the money from her bank account, probably at gunpoint. Lee's bank statement showed that she withdrew at least $1,000 from an ATM in one day, supporting this theory. After robbing Lee, investigators believe Castillo drove her to a remote, wooded area in Cabarrus County. He then shot her in the head and dumped her lifeless body in a nearby ravine, where it was later discovered. Afterward, Castillo and Feaster escaped in a black four-door Toyota Corolla that belonged to Lee and headed to Phoenix, Arizona. The fugitive couple parked the stolen car at a bus shelter there and abandoned the vehicle, which was later found on August 15. They continued on the run, and after making their way to Nogales, the couple crossed the border into Mexico. This move was captured by a few surveillance cameras, but since then, the two of them have yet to be seen. Investigators believe Castillo is still hiding somewhere in Mexico, possibly in Pabellón de Arteaga or in the state of Aguas Calientes. But they also think he could be in the states of Veracruz or Guanajuato. Surprisingly, Castillo's girlfriend Feaster eventually turned herself in to authorities on October 20, 2016 in Aguas Calientes. She was taken back to the U.S. 2 days later and arrested near Houston, Texas by the Harris County Sheriff's Office. According to Feaster, Castillo disappeared at some point, and she wasn't able to find him again, prompting her to turn herself in since she was alone in a strange, foreign country. If someone you loved was wrongfully accused and sent to prison, would you try and help them escape? Or would you trust in our legal system, thinking everything would eventually be worked out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 3. Arnaldo Jimenez. Arnaldo Jimenez murdered his wife, Estrella Carrera, in Burbank, Illinois on May 12, 2012 in cold blood the day after they got married. 7 years later, on May 8, 2019, he was finally added to the FBI's most wanted fugitives list. Estrella had 2 children, a 2-year-old son with Jimenez and a 9-year-old daughter from a past relationship. After their wedding at Chicago City Hall, the couple had dinner with friends and family members before heading to a nightclub. They reportedly partied there until 4 a.m. before leaving. The FBI now believes that on the way home at some point that night, the pair got into a heated argument in Jimenez's car. Then, Jimenez stabbed Estrella multiple times in the vehicle, brutally killing her. When he finally got back to his apartment, he dragged her lifeless body inside and dumped her in the bathtub. Estrella was apparently still wearing her silver wedding dress. The woman was scheduled to pick up her children from family members later that day, but she never showed up. This was when they reported her missing to police. Estrella's body was found in the apartment on May 13th, and officers found no sign of forced entry. Jimenez had also vanished along with the crime scene, his car. A state warrant was issued for the man's arrest, and the fugitive was soon accused of first-degree murder. A federal warrant was also issued to him on May 17th after he was charged with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Investigators tracked Jimenez to Chicago and then down through southern Illinois, but they realized that his phone was later used in Tennessee and Arkansas. Afterward, he also made calls from Houston and Hidalgo, Mexico. Today, his current whereabouts are unknown, but the FBI believes he could be hiding out in several spots including Durango, Mexico, or Reynosa, Tamaulipas. Number 2. Alexis Flores. Alexis Flores was responsible for the murder of an innocent 5-year-old girl in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania back in 2000. He's a Honduran fugitive and is wanted for kidnapping and multiple sexual assault charges. Flores was added to the FBI's most wanted list on June 2, 2007, and still remains at large. During summer in 2000, a homeless drifter named Carlos was given clothing, shelter, and work by Hunting Park in Philadelphia, which was owned by Jorge Contreras. But on August 3rd, the body of Iriana de Jesus was found in the basement of an empty apartment building, the same place Carlos was staying. When authorities questioned Contreras about the death, he recognized a t-shirt from the crime scene and said he'd lent it to Carlos. After the murder, Carlos, aka Flores, left the area, but he was arrested 2 years later in Arizona for a petty shoplifting charge. Then, in 2004, officers went to Flores' new residence in response to a noise complaint. He gave fraudulent identity documents to the police and shortly after was once again arrested for possession of a forgery device. The authorities noted that when they brought him in for questioning, he had a kind, friendly demeanor and cooperated with the investigation. But when they went in to search his apartment, they found pornography all across the floors. Flores ended up serving 60 days in jail and was deported to Honduras after his release in June 2005. But a year later, his DNA was matched to the DNA found at the crime scene in the Philadelphia apartment where he murdered the young girl. It was then that police discovered that Carlos and Flores were the same person. In 2007, he was added to the FBI's most wanted fugitives list, but he's been on the run ever since. Flores is considered to be armed and extremely dangerous. He speaks English and Spanish, and it's believed that he could still be in either Honduras or in the US under an alias. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $100,000 for information that could lead to his capture. It's time this man was finally taken off the streets. Number 1. Omar Alexander Cardenas. Omar Alexander Cardenas is an alleged member of the notorious Los Angeles-based Pierce Street Gang, and he's wanted for a murder that happened in 2019. 46-year-old Jabali Dumas was shot and killed on August 15, 2019, outside a barbershop in LA's Sylmar neighborhood. Michael Moore, the LAPD chief, stated that Omar fired 9 rounds at Jabali from about 30 feet away, with one fatally striking him in the head. The victim passed away at the crime scene, and Omar was seen escaping in his vehicle after the shooting. Authorities believe that in an attempt to avoid getting arrested, Omar fled to Mexico. The fugitive was officially charged with the murder in April 2020, and in September 2021, he was also charged with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Then, in July 2022, Omar was added to the FBI's most wanted fugitives list, where he has remained to this day. While it's mostly believed Omar is somewhere in Mexico, the FBI thinks he could also be in Southern California, where he has many friends and family members. He could be earning money as a construction worker in order to keep a low profile. Omar is 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighs something between 240 and 300 pounds. He's Hispanic, has brown hair and brown eyes. If you see him, be sure to report to the authorities, who are offering up to $100,000 for information leading to his capture. Which of these criminals do you think deserve to be on the FBI's most wanted list the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Bad Badger.